Good morning, everybody. This is the Roaming Prepper channel, and thank you for joining me today. Uh, as you can see, this is going to be a pre-recorded Saturday. The next couple of weeks, I've got some vacation, and I'll be honest, guys, I've not used enough vacation the last couple of years with everything going on and just work in general. So you'll see me in and out a little bit less frequently than you're used to. I'll still be doing the shorts, still be doing the lives when I can, but there'll be a few pre-recorded ones while I kind of back up a bit and not only take care of personal business and family business, but also, enjoy life just a little bit. And that is what's spawning my current topic. Because I'll be honest, I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired. I'm mentally. There are days I get up and my brain's a fog, both work wise and prepping and the social media thing. Sometimes, mentally speaking, you need to retreat and take a break. And so that's what you'll see. It's not like I'm going to disappear or anything, but you're going to see a few more pre-recorded things than you're used to, and that's purely as I take some time and actually do a little bit of traveling just for giggles. Just go, despite the price of gas. We do have things we have to get done, so we're going to go. So instead of making multiple trips, we're making one or two real big brown the area trips and hitting everything at once. And by the way, travel tip for you: if you're going to make a trip to a city, try to get a lot of things done at once. If you're looking for that special item you can't mail order or you want to see in person while you're visiting your friends, while you're in the area, do it. And don't forget, if you're around and about visiting family, go hit the stores, see what the prices are, see what's available. It'll give you some idea of what's available in what places, and understanding how the market is evolved the way it has, or devolved in some cases, is useful information for you. And you never know, you might find something you really need, and it might be at a price point that's not stupid, and you can enjoy it. But with no further ado, I do want to go into this topic because I think it's really important. Um, so, our very beloved and talented creator, Lucky Dame, started a couple of weeks ago or last week. I'm losing track of time. And we had a panel, myself, Hudson Valley, Prepping and Survival, the Livingston Man, Lucky, and myself, talking about mags and people who were basically saying, we're going to go and take from you. Basically, preppers who were actually marauders or pirates, if you will, in disguise. They were pretending to be preppers, but they weren't. They were just figuring out who had what so they could take it. And that spawned into a conversation, both on my live with Hudson Valley and then his individual live. And then, if I think Angry Prepper did one, it's been a stream of us talking about people behaving badly in hard times. I want to flip that around. I want to flip to the other side of that. How do we, and then the people in our circle, focus in a positive way? And the only place I could think to look was in the business and educational forum. Because it's easy to look up at preppers and Green Berets who say the psychology of survival is X, Y, and Z. But these are people who've gone through extensive training. Now, if you happen to be a former Green Beret or Marsoc Marine, hey, more power to you. But most of us are not. A lot of us do have experiences that we can pull on. And I want to talk now in this live, and it'll be this pre-recorded live. Um, it'll be a little shorter than normal, but I want to focus the steps we can take as preparedness minded folks to make ourselves not only more successful, but to align the people around us so that all of us are on the same page. You're a lone wolf, that's all fine and dandy. It's a challenge, and there are benefits to it. But if you have 10 people or 20 or an entire community who is all thinking alike, all of a sudden the sheriff now has a lot of people to rely on. The mayor has a lot of talent to pull from. Each individual person can count on the neighbor. And if you can get everyone in that same mindset, now you've got a community all working together, and that multiplies the chances of you doing well. Survival in many respects and prepping is a statistics game. You know, in 95% of any disaster, you will need canned food, unless you get hit by a nuke, in which case it's redundant, right? Okay, so canned food, you stock up on canned food. That will assist you in 95% of the possible scenarios. If you have a pew, well, if there are zombies, the pew will help you a lot. If it's a meteor, not so useful. But it will help you in X number of scenarios, so you may have a pew. So you kind of see what I'm saying. There's certain things that we prepare for, not for a specific event, but because they cover a swath of events. Psychologically and mentally, we can do the same thing. We can kind of align ourselves and then align people around us to all function the same way, to where we're all pushing for the same goal. Now, you will have the outliers. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have the people who don't want to work together, who want to take, who find it easier to be a-holes, and those are the ones you'll have to deal with thusly. That may be a completely different video, but this one I'm going to focus on aligning yourself and aligning your family or your loved ones, and then aligning your circle to go in a certain direction. So I'm going to start with this short video, and I thought it was pretty neat. And let me see if I can bring it up here, because it seems to not want to play at the moment. Classic Saturday. And here we go. Let's see if we can... there it is. Sorry about that. Let's start that and see what it says. So I thought that was a neat video, and it touches on a lot of subjects, some of which involve opening your mind, training yourself in advance, not just for actual skills, but psychologically, what could happen and what would I do in that scenario. Off the Wall uses, I think, the battle board. Some people call it wargaming. Um, Others call it, I like to call the scenario videos. Uh, Look at those potentialities. What could be happening? What could not be happening? How do I evolve this situation so that I can get through whatever it is that's going on at the time? And But how do you do that? So, one, you start with research. Start looking, look at what your skill set, your wellness, your health is, your psychological wellness, your physical wellness. What gear do you have? What skill sets can you pull from? Because that's going to inform what you're strong in and where your gaps are. Once you know where the gaps are, that's where you can start to train yourself psychologically. Where if this happens, what do I do? So if you're prepping and say a tree falls on the shed where you had preps, okay, now how do you adapt? One, you salvage. Two, cut up the tree. Now you got firewood. You start moving in that direction. Um, Training and forethought will very often help you survive a situation. And it then goes to touch on, and let me bring that video up because I think some of these, and this one comes from Brainy Power. It's a smaller channel. It's actually a very small channel, and this individual's talking about teaching, teaching of uh, of kids, teaching of students, and how for a teacher to identify a student with a learning brain versus a student in a survival mindset, because their reactions are very different. And once you understand how the learning and open mind versus the survival and somewhat more closed mind behaves, you can also see those trends in yourself. So let me share that one with you because I think that's another one. Again, this comes from Brainy Power. And let me see if I can share the screen. Hold on a second here, my friends. And there we go. So I'm going to let this one run, and let me expand that so you guys can see it better. And I'm going to minimize myself so you guys can watch this for a few minutes and just get an idea of the differences between the psychologies. So I'll be right back. I'm going to get this going. Hold on.
I wanted to think about what's the best way to teach teachers about trauma without getting them distracted with all the technical stuff, and what's the most important thing for them to understand and learn. And I thought that the best way to do it might be to just make a difference between a learning brain versus a brain in survival mode. So we'll just call it learning brain versus survival brain. And this is the difference. So learning brain is this brain that's open to learning new information, and it's completely okay with ambiguity and grays and vagueness, and it sees the big picture. It like pulls back and is on the balcony, can look over the forest and figure out what's going on. On an emotional level, people in learning brain feel calm, peaceful, maybe a little excited about what they're about to learn, maybe a little playful and having fun too, and definitely curious. And they're not afraid of making mistakes because it's just part of the learning process. And so they're not really thinking about themselves. And they actually feel a little bit of confidence that if they just apply themselves, they might pick up what they're trying to learn. Now, survival brain, on the other hand, is completely different. It's hyper-focused on threat. It doesn't like ambiguity. It wants clear, hard facts. It thinks in black and white terms. It doesn't want anything to be gray at all. And then emotionally, you can imagine that survival brain makes people feel panicky, feel like a little obsessive and afraid of getting things wrong. And they don't feel calm and open to learning new things. They just want to get things over with. And people in survival brain also really don't like making mistakes, and they are afraid of looking stupid too. So students in survival brain don't want to be picked on. They don't want to raise their hand and ask questions and look stupid. And so these people are also filled with doubt about their own ability to learn stuff, and they're afraid that other people can see how stupid they really are. Now, it's really important to understand how learning brain and survival brain interact, because survival brain always trumps learning brain. And it makes sense because survival brain is just trying to save your life. And so if it thinks that there's something dangerous happening, you better pay attention to it, right? But the tricky thing is that as survival brain stays on longer and longer, it's harder to get out of that. And it's harder to really go into learning brain. And the way I think about it is kind of like the myth of Sisyphus. You know, that guy who has to push a rock up a hill, and then every day it falls back down and he has to do it over and over again? Well, being in learning brain is like being up on the high parts of that mountain. You can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Now, the kicker is that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all.
Second, folks. Hold on a second, folks. Looks like he had a bit of a technical difficulty, so let me back up here and get that shared again. Because I think this adds a lot of value. And while I've battled the screen, um, understanding the fact that if you're in a survival mode and you start to get stressed for whatever reason, whether it's an SHTF or you just had an accident or you lost your job, um, being in that mode will actually start to cloud your ability to think logically and then to learn the things you need to learn to get out of the situation in the first place. So I'm going to start this again. Oh, by the way, and there's Brainy Power. I've only seen a few of their videos or his videos. They seem really cool. So I just want to give due credit to the person we're looking to. I'll start this video again. Sorry about that, guys.
Up on the high parts of that mountain, you can see the expanse of what's going on, but it also takes a lot of work to be up there. And at any second, if you're not paying attention and putting effort into it, it's so easy to slip back into survival brain again. And that rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up, well, that's kind of like stress. And the more stressed you feel, the heavier and bigger that rock gets, and it just pushes you back into survival brain quicker. Now, the kicker is that for traumatized people, stress is a really rigid and intense thing. And so with trauma, any little stress makes that rock grow way bigger than it normally would. And because people with trauma misperceive ambiguous situations as threatening and stressful, that rock just stays big all the time. Now, the good news is that the more you control stress, well, the easier it is to be in learning brain, right? Because that rock is a lot smaller. And what I really want to highlight for teachers is that the best way to keep students in learning brain goes back to why I spent so much time talking about attachment. Students best learn when they feel like they're safe and supported by the adults around them. So it's kind of like a baby elephant. You know how like on those nature shows, the baby elephant is like playing with leaves or exploring a tree or something like that and having a lot of fun. And the only reason why they can do that is because there's a whole group of mama elephants around that baby protecting it and looking out for danger. So a kid with trauma or who's stuck in survival brain, it's kind of like that baby elephant who doesn't have protective adults around them. They can't play and learn because they're way too focused looking out for threat and danger. So this is why I really believe that the most important thing that schools need to focus on, way more important than any kind of techniques or curricula, is really whether or not they are creating that environment where students feel like they're surrounded by these big mama elephants who are going to protect them and watch out for them and make them safe. And when students have that, I bet you it unlocks their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, and play as a way to learn. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks.
So friends, just a little context, that also applies to us as adults. If you've had a trauma in the past, abusive relationships, which, I've have people in my circle today who were in abusive relationships, or even if you were a kid or you have PTSD from combat or an accident, all of these things can engage your survival brain. Then it muddles your thinking when you need it most, which is in an emergency logical brain. There are ways to go around that. So, how is that? Things like scenario, as I said before, training yourself. Go to training. If you see someone bleeding out very badly, they've cut their hand open in or their arm in a kitchen, and you grab paper towels and then call 911, well, you've done something positive. But if you know how to stop the bleeding, put the tourniquet, and effectively stop the incident from getting worse, then you have definitely Amazon time. You have definitely you can put the dog icons now, by the way. If you've done that, you've definitely now improved the situation. You've made it better. By the same token, if you get in a car accident and you know how to hike out, how to get away from that situation, it will make things much better. So, again, a lot of things applicable to this educational video, uh, which is really meant for teachers. It's really meant to teach teachers how to function. It's meant to teach teachers how to recognize these kids who've been through a trauma or insecure, who are in danger, and how to help them reach out, how to reach out to them and make them better students, help them learn, help them gain confidence. By the same token, in a preparedness mindset, you reduce the stress in a situation if you understand the situation. You have the training, you scenario played, you did research. Doing something as simple as reading a book about a situation that someone went through, if you encounter a similar situation, you can apply those lessons the other person learned. You have something here to fall back on. So, again, training. I've made some short videos about using your gear in everyday situations when it's not stressful. Like the solar setup I set up at a charity event. Not stressful. If it worked, great. If it didn't, great. But it did work, and I got to put it together, and I realized certain things don't plug in the way I thought. Certain things have to be set up a certain way. But now I know this. If I were to use it in an emergency scenario, I get stuck in the woods and I have that Jackery and the solar panel to power my comms or to power my fan, I would know, okay, I've already done this before. I've scenario played this before. And so it's not a strange situation, and it's not a situation where you lock up. And these are tools we can use right now, and not only for yourself, but people in your mag, people in your circle. And again, you, as Lucky pointed out and Hudson pointed out, there are people not behaving well. So you're going to have to learn a little bit of that emotional intelligence, and I'll touch on that in another video. A little bit of that emotional intelligence, so you know how to pick out people who may be a problem. But that's going to be a whole separate question. Right now, I want to focus on yourself and your circle, and then what you can do. Because if you're focused and you know what to do, or you have a good idea of a course of action to take, other people will be sitting there confused. You're going to have a percentage who are going to flip out and actually become self destructive. You don't want to be that percentage. And I'm going to touch on another video here shortly. Then there's 80% or a larger percentage. I don't know, 80%, that's probably a fictitious number, but there's, think of a bell curve, right? The middle group will all react the same. It's the herd, the sheep, as we often say. They're going to be confused. They're going to be kind of waiting for direction. They're going to react whatever the person next to them does, they're going to do. Then you have the 10% that react in a positive way. And keep in mind, the 10% that act in a negative way are not just self destructive, they may be destructive to you or someone around you. Those are the pirates, marauders, a-holes, whatever you want to call them. You want to try to be in the 10% because if you have a group of people and you and your spouse, or you and your friend, or you and another person say, wait, we know how to deal with this, and you take action, people will see you and start taking the same action. And pretty soon you're going to see that psychology of the herd, but the herd has now turned to a positive direction because two or three people took the right action, as opposed to the herd waiting there for the active shooter or the meteorite or zombies or whatever. So I did find one more video that I want to share with you guys because I think this one's super relevant, and it's a few minutes long, so I'm going to let it play here for a bit. Now, this comes from Health and Homestead. I actually really like the video. I did subscribe to the channel. Check it out if you like it. Subscribe. If not, don't subscribe. That's okay too. But I thought where he was going was pretty interesting. I believe he's a little bit faith-based, so if it gets churchy, my apologies. But kind of filter that out and just look at the bigger picture. So let me get that video spun up, and I'd like you guys to kind of take a listen to what he's saying here, so you can apply these lessons and understand how people are going to react around you. Because if you have done the training, you've worked on yourself, you've got the training, survival, even if you're disabled or you have limited funds or limited equipment, you've already accounted for your own weaknesses, but now there are people around you have to deal with. Here's a way to kind of steer the ones you can in the right direction, and also a little bit understanding on how some of these people will react. And there may be a point you have to detach from the other people and go, you know what, y'all are not doing the right thing. I don't want to go down with you. So good luck and peace out. And you and the people of like mind go your own way. So let's check out what this guy has. I'm going to back out of the video for a second just so you guys can kind of enjoy. And let me make sure I got my audio going. And all right, here you go.
And they found that there are basically 3 different ways that people respond in emergencies, and only one of those ways is healthy. And we're going to talk about the research on how to be a survivor. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. Now you're going to want to wait until the end of this video where we talk about research that was done during the Korean conflict that looked at how certain men were able to survive and even thrive in a concentration camp type experience. What 2 main characteristics, or 2 of the main characteristics they found in these men. So we'll get to that at the end. But first of all, so research once again has been conducted looking at the different responses to being in an emergency situation. Just to give you an example, a story that was given in Ben Sherwood's book, The Survivors Club, very powerful information. In this book, he shares a story of a man by the name of Paul Barney, who in 1994 was riding on the ship Estonia, and he had claustrophobia, so he didn't want to be down below the deck. So he was actually sleeping on the deck, and he was sleeping next to a restaurant in a sleeping bag. And he awoke one night, and the ship was literally, it was in the Baltic Sea, the ship was tilted on its side, and it was quite cold outside. And as normally a ship will begin to right itself, he noticed the ship was not righting itself at all. And it got worse and worse, and then plates started flying and other debris began to just go crashing by him, and he realized this is not good. It looks like we're going down. So he jumped out of his sleeping bag and put on his boots, and he ran into another passenger, and they began to discuss what they were going to do to survive. And they had a good discussion, and they looked around at other people, and to their amazement, people were literally doing nothing. They weren't even trying to save themselves. They were just standing there doing nothing, as if they just wanted them, somebody to tell them what to do. It was like they were just frozen. And so then he with the other man, they noticed that there was one life preserver, like one of those lifesavers, rather, those circular, life preservers you throw to somebody. And they realized only one of them could have it. The other man ran to it and he grabbed it, and once he grabbed it, a wave just smashed him off the side of the ship. But he got the life preserver anyway, and so he was gone. But Now Paul had to decide what to do, and the ship kept going further and further and further. And it was as it had totally made it to his side, he had to hold on. He began to climb up. He made it on top, and he said as he got to the top, he was amazed at the beauty of the moonlight there. He was at like full, he had full mental faculties at the moment. Like he was totally together. And so he thought, man, I gotta try to get to a lifeboat. So he ran and ultimately got to a lifeboat, but actually he was in the water by this point, made his way to a lifeboat, pulled himself up on the lifeboat, and then began to help others. And he saved, there were like 15, 16 people total on this boat, this life raft. And some of the people on the life raft were just hysterical. They were nuts. They were crazy. They were actually they were destructive to their own self. And what he noticed was that the ones who were crazy, who had gone absolutely bonkers, that they didn't make it to the next day. He points out. Now, this story encapsulates basically the three responses that people have in emergency situations. You have one group, and they call this the 80-10-10, or rather the 10-80-10 principle. And what that is that 10% of the people in an emergency situation, they go absolutely crazy. They're destructive to their own selves. They actually hurt themselves. That's 10% of the people. You obviously don't want to be a part of that group. The other group, or one of the other two, is the 80%. Now, 80% of people do what the other people on the ship were doing, where they kind of just like freeze and wait for somebody to tell them what to do. They're like, is somebody going to tell us what to do? I've totally been there, where I was in a auditorium where there were like 3,000 people roughly, and the fire alarm went off, and you know what to do when the fire alarm goes off. We all do the same thing, right? Absolutely nothing. We just sit there. And that's what everybody was doing. And then a doctor friend walked by, and as he was walking out, my wife said to me, "Hey, do you think we ought to just follow him?" And nobody was going. And I said, "Sure, let's go." So we followed him. And then he told us about this book, The Survivor's Club. He's like, "Hey, check it out, read it." It also, I don't get paid to, it was just a fascinating book. I'm just sharing this book that was quite impactful. And it also talks about how to survive in a plane crash, unless you're all crushed immediately. But regardless, so I was one of those people who just would wait. And so most people just wait for someone to tell them what to do. They're not proactive. They just sit around, and maybe they don't want to look funny. Like, oh, I don't want to act like I'm afraid there's a fire. And you may be thinking, Chad, so you afraid you're going to die? Not really, no. I mean, I have, we just had someone chasing us, my wife and I, just a few weeks ago, actually, maybe roughly 2 months ago. And this man came, and we were having a Zoom conference. So we were asked to do something on the science of marriage and relationships. So we were doing that seminar. We had to do it at a park because I have bad internet at our house. And long story short, this guy comes in and starts doing donuts. Nobody's around at all, and it's 10 o'clock at night. And this guy's doing donuts, and he's right next to our car. I can't see him because it's too dusty. And finally, he does about 8 donuts. And donuts are when you like spin in a circle as fast as you can, and the back end is just, peeling out. And so he was doing that like 8 times. He was getting closer and closer, just about to hit our car. And my thought was, man, this guy's an amazing driver. This guy's really good. And then he took off, and we told the people in the conference, because we were basically done anyway. We said, hey, we better take off. Pray for us. And so we took off, and he saw us when we got to the end of the parking lot. He was at the end of the road. He saw us, and he started chasing us. So as we're going, we get to the next intersection. I turn left. He chases, and he comes up and finally hits our car from the back. And then he takes off, and I go to tiny little town. We live way out in national forest area, and so there we were going to a gas station. Once we got to the gas station, the cops came. Ultimately, he came and kind of started messing with us again. We didn't even know the guy. And the cops grabbed him, arrested him. He was fighting and so forth. Before that, he took off again and said, "What are you going to do to the cops?" He took off. They arrested him. Long story short, I was as comfortable. I was totally at peace in that situation. You might even call it like a peace that surpasses understanding. You might call it that. But back to the point. So the third group of people are those who are calm and collected during the situation, and they make rational, logical, movements and plans, and they're looking actively to find a way out of this emergency, potentially death-defying experience. And so we all want to learn to be a part of that third group. One of the things you want to do, and they point this out in the book by Ben Sherwood, is that, like, for instance, when you're on a plane, the most likely people to die in a plane crash are, guess who? The people who fly all the time. Why? Because they're totally comfortable. When it's your first time flying, what do? You get on the plane and they're like, everybody pull out the card in front of you. It's going to tell you where the emergency exits are, and it's going to show you how to do this and that and whatever. And if you've been on, 50 flights, you're just like, whatever, and you're on your phone or reading a book. But to those who are brand new, they're like, okay, where's the exit? Oh, 2 rows up. Oh, 6 rows back, whatever. They know. And so when the plane crashes, they know, oh, I got to go over there. I got to go out that way. Other people, they're lost. They're in the fog and smoke. You get the idea. And so they don't make it. At least they're less likely to, according to the research. So here's the point. We want to be people, if you want to be a person who survives, a true survivor in life, you want to be someone who's active and proactive. That in difficult situations, or even if there's a fire alarm, instead of just being like, oh, I'll wait for somebody to tell me what to do. Well, what would you want to do if the building were on fire? You'd probably want to get out, right? And so obviously that's what you'd want to do. And so maybe.
So guys, I'm going to leave it with that. I'm going to let you guys do your own research. But I wanted to watch this video. It goes on and then it leads into another video, and that's a bit beyond the scope of what I was going to talk about today. But what I wanted to do is just put that out there. Okay, we've talked about people that you can't trust. We've talked about the people who are not behaving. Hudson talked to us about not perpetuating hatred. I want to take it another step, another aspect, really. It's not even another step. They're all like this different aspects of the same thing, and talk about how you prepare yourself. Because if you take the right steps in an emergency, people will notice eventually. And it's a very fine balance between teaching people how to be prepared and scaring the crap out of them. And sometimes we're all guilty if we get a little too excited and they freak out. Don't do that. Work on yourself, your preparedness. As he pointed out, you had the 10% that freaked out and the 10% that took action and the 80% that stood there. Work actively to put yourself into that 10% that takes action. Okay, now you never know. There may be nothing you can do in a situation. There are going to be situations, sadly, where some of us may not survive. But as he pointed out, when things go wrong and people walk out of it, it's very often the ones who had some presence of mind, who had seen the scenario before, who saw something and said, wow, I know how to handle this. I know a course of action for this. And if you don't, educate yourself, watch videos, read books, look at scenarios, war game with people you trust, and just play those scenarios out in your head. So if something happens, you have a toolbox in your mind that you can say, I'm going to pull from this toolbox and I'm going to apply this lesson learned from the past into what's happening now. So guys, I wanted to leave that on a positive note this week because there's been a lot of stuff that's just dragging down. I like where Lucky was going with her video that last Sunday where we started talking about people you couldn't trust. Hudson followed up with a lot of topics on not perpetuating hate, how the hate, being a negative person can hurt you. So guys, take those actions, go those routes, and until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Take care. And there go the dogs again.